going to start recording.
Okay, we're good. Hey, Suja.
So we're going to start recording because we're already getting good questions. Like, hello, everybody. I'm Austin.
Hi, Wendy.
Everybody and Suja. So I just got one question from Nancy. She said, is there people who do yoga teacher trainings who don't want to become yoga teachers? And yes, that was how I did my first yoga teacher training.
Okay.
I wanted to go and just learn because I felt like I was behind and I didn't understand everything. And so I wanted to dive into it and really understand what these classes I was going to twice a day sometimes. And I never thought I would teach. I never thought. And I did my teacher training. And I'm so grateful that I did it because it really did push me in the right direction in my own spiritual practice. But it just so happened that the teacher, the asana teacher that I was going to classes with, I got home from Omega where I did my teacher training, and she called me up and she said, I'm sick. I can't go teach class at the gym. You have to go teach. And I said, I can't teach. I've never taught a class in my life. And she said, well, they're expecting you, and hung up the phone on me. And so that was how I started teaching, but I never expected to teach. I just wanted to go and learn and be a student.
Hi, Wendy.
Hi. I'm not muted. Am I late? Because I'm in the eastern part of Canada and we're an hour behind. So
No, we haven't.
Early.
We're still 10 minutes off from starting.
oh,
so.
good. Okay, great. Great.
But
I'm glad I'm not late.
But people were already logging on. Nancy was already on, and we jumped on. And so we just kind of like decided, well, let's just start the recording and like start answering questions while people are here in case, they have to jump off and they don't have any questions. Where are you in Canada?
So I normally live in Ontario, Canada, which in the Toronto area. But my daughter just started her career as a Royal Canadian Mounted Police in Eastern Canada. So I'm on Cape Breton Island in Nova Scotia right now.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's
So I came to help her. Yeah.
I've never actually met a mounted Canadian police officer.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you would know
the mother of one.
I'm the mother of one. She's brand new. She just graduated from the academy. So you would picture the red serge that they have, but they don't wear that to work normally. That's more for ceremonies and celebrations. But so she's, but yeah, in the eastern part of Canada, it's a beautiful island in Cape Breton, and I'm thrilled that she's here because it'll be a little safer, certainly than some more cosmopolitan areas. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So she's just in day 3. This is her 3rd day. I came to help her move in. So yeah.
So and how long is the training to
it's 6 months at the academy. They live there, and it's very military style. So it's very rigorous. But she really enjoyed the experience, and then she gets 6 more months of field coaching, and then after that she's considered to be trained. But she's an officer now, and far so good. Yeah. Yeah, she's just learning the ropes now. After all the theory, she's gonna try to see what it's like in the field.
Right. And they ride on horses.
They used to. So the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, they're 150 years old, and that was how they started the work. Now they do the horse riding for musical ride for those people who are in that. My daughter actually can ride a horse, but she's not part of the musical ride program. So that's like that's kind of a particular type of work in the RCMP, but she's not doing that. She's just an officer right now in the field.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting.
Yeah,
it's a federal service, with the only one in Canada that goes across. They mainly serve more remote parts of our country, and places where they don't have a regional service. So it's kind of interesting. Yeah, she chose it for an adventure.
It sounds like it's going to be an adventure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But
And it's nice to meet you. I guess I had read about b both, I don't know your names because they're not popping up, but
Austin and
Bobby.
Austin.
Bob is my partner, and
Okay,
we run the studio together. And I'm the yoga teacher. He's the person who makes everything work.
okay, wonderful. That you need both.
He's the person who behind the scenes makes
Yeah.
all of that stuff that's not very yogic work.
No, but it's very important to making things go. And Nancy, are you just an interested person like me?
Exactly.
Or yeah, okay. And where are you located,
I'm in
Nancy?
White Plains, New York, just north of the city.
Okay, yeah. I've been to Omega 3 times, so I certainly know the Hudson Valley now. What a beautiful part of the world
It
you're
really
in.
is. Yeah.
So pretty. Yeah. Love it.
And so what were you going to say when you said you didn't know, you saw the material?
Right. So yeah, I just I'm here because I'm a member of Omega and I got the information about this course in the summer, and I'm just really curious. I've been just practicing for a little more than a year and a half myself, and I go really faithfully. So I've made a lot of progress. I don't know if I want to be an instructor. I heard, but the whole course sounds so interesting with the 6 components of the training and all of what it means beyond just learning to be a good yoga practitioner. So I'm just here to learn, and maybe this will work out for me in the summer. So that's
And
why
we're very fortunate too that Devdutt Patnaik, who's one of the premier mythologists in the world, is going to be doing the mythology and the sacred text portion of the training too, as well as his own, which if you come, you'll be invited to also, 3-day course on comparative mythology.
I think it's
Right.
called the mythology toolbox.
Right.
And so that's a huge component of all the students who get to go to his training. Because I really think that like when Nancy says she's curious about the philosophy and the psychology behind yoga, originally people like us, just everyday people, would not have learned the yoga texts such as Yoga Sutras of Patanjali or the Bhagavad Gita or even Hatha Yoga Pradipika. That would have been a specific group of people, who would have been Brahmins and been born into that. And we would have all learned it through storytelling. We would have learned the same things, but we would have learned it through like narratives and people telling stories about saints and mythological beings channeling this energy of yoga, and we would have just learned it slightly different. So that I think is a very important component for us as Western practitioners to understand the philosophical, intellectual side of it from Shastras, the Yoga Shastras, the textbooks, but then also understand it how, you can tell it to people through storytelling. And why you're like in all of these asanas, even these postures that we're doing, they're all relating back to stories, every one of them. And so the average person who would have been practicing yoga asana, 1,000 years ago or 500 years ago, they would have known all the little stories to like, why is it a bow? Why is it Shiva dancing? Why is it a cow? Why is it a fish? Why is it a warrior? Which warrior is it? And we lost that. And then when we lose that, we really lose that sense of weaving in the spiritual narrative into a physical practice. So we're really lucky that Devdutt's going to come from India, do his event, but then spend like a full day with you guys the day before his event, and just ask any questions. He also has done 3 very good films for us. that explain the history and mythology of yoga. Then he focuses on the Ramayana, and then he focuses on the Mahabharata, the two big epic texts. And that day, when he's done this with us before, the day that he spends with his students, I just let them ask him questions about the films that he created, explaining things for us.
Could you just talk about what the structure of the training would be? So it's over
Sure.
the summer?
It's for a full 28 days, right? Am I right, Bob? Is it 28 days?
28 days, July 28th through August 25th.
Yes. And so the training, it would start out each morning. We would get up and we would we'll chant and we'll have a little discourse about that Sanskrit mantra. And each morning it's a mantra. We'll focus on a mantra, and then we'll have a meditation on the mantra. Then there'll be a physical class, an asana class. After that, there'll be an asana lab where we'll look at like specific groups of asanas. That takes, I think, place over about a 10-day course.
Wow.
And then after that, there's lunch. There's breakfast before we have meditation, just so you know. Then there's lunch, and then we come back and there's a discourse time. So there's time for lectures. I mean, everybody has a full belly who wants to like do any kind of physical thing. As that goes on, then there's a dinner. You know, you have your dinner, and then after dinner we have a satsang each night. And satsang, it'll be multiple things kind of happening. Some nights it will be a lecture, especially the first couple of days, because we have to get through some really esoteric information before we can kind of start talking about certain things. But then I also found that one of the things that happened as I did 3 or 4 of these teacher trainings is that I think it's because of the pandemic, I think it's because of a lot of other things, there was a disconnect from even the recent history of how we got here in the yoga tradition. Like, how did we get to this place we're at today in 2024? And so there's a series of films that I think are important to kind of really frame the narrative of how Western yoga got here, starting with some of the teachings of Ram Dass, who is Ram Dass, Yogananda, Parahamsa Yogananda. Who is he? What was his teachings that he brought to America? Who were those great yoga teachers in the kind of heyman, the 60s and 70s of the yoga movement? And how did we get here? So some nights there are films. They're films with different themes and different ideas, but some of it is to just kind of gain that knowledge of how we are in this space that we're in of modern yoga. And in what direction are we going to go next with it? I also want to give a big wave to Kate Zeckley. She is here online now, and she's my co-facilitator.
Hey, everybody.
Hi.
She's down in Florida, I think.
You're on campus for the whole training.
I'm sorry, what was that
I
question?
said you're on the campus, the Omega campus, for the whole training.
Yes, that's the beauty of this. This is like super special, and I don't think that people really realize how special this is. Kate and I both did this kind of a training where we went away for like a month, and we studied in that environment and just lived, slept, ate yoga for 28 days. And this is what I wanted to recreate, because after the post-pandemic, when the pandemic hit, all of those things went away. Everybody took everything online. And, and I think that like some things are really okay online, but to learn online, you have to be a focused individual. And I think that that's what's very interesting about post-pandemic, even in academia. we're looking now at the learning process of online learning, and MIT came out with a study a few months ago that showed that like people who are studying online are not retaining information. And I think personally it's because there's just too many distractions in your own home when you like study online. Like the cat jumps in your lap, the doorbell rings, you go to the refrigerator, just everything that all that stuff that is can take place. You don't really.
I think there's also certain things like it's fine for when I'm doing an acting audition for film because ultimately I'm going to be on a screen. So it's fine to be doing an audition and on Zoom. Where it gets weird is like if you're doing a theater audition in Zoom because it's a tactile art form, you have to be there. Similarly, I think with yoga, unless you're teaching particularly virtually, which I think that's a totally separate art and skill. If you're learning how to teach with a body or bodies in front of you, you have to learn with another body in space. It just doesn't work. You can't communicate because some of the language is physical. It's not just reciting something.
Yes. Yeah. I would agree with that too. How do you, dealing with another person in space is crucial in any kind of a teacher training. I also think because because both Nancy and Wendy expressed that they may not want to actually teach, they may want to just come for knowledge, that even in person, you're going to learn more about your own body with other bodies in the room and you're going to learn more about your meditation practice. You're going to learn more about the way that you take in information with other people around you than in isolation in your own home. I just think that like people need people. They need to be around people. They need to associate with people. And the learning process is deepened when there's a connection amongst a group of people on every level.
It sounds fabulous. I just not doable at this point.
Oh, we would love to have you.
It's hard because like you do a weekend teacher training, you lose your weekends, you do your all at once, you're like, oh my God, I'm going to be gone a month. I mean, I guess you figure it out one way or another and like life happens. So you got to give yourself that grace. I mean, it was not, I'm not going to lie, like it wasn't easy being away for a month. I mean, I don't have like a real job. I never have. So that makes it a little easier. But it was still like a full month's immersion into something like, and it's almost monastic in a way because you're just like on this campus and like you're with the same people. It's a real like it's difficult in its own way. But I would say it's also difficult to do a weekend teacher training because you have to have segmented focus. So I imagine it would be much equally as difficult in different ways to just do it on the weekends for like 4 months and have to switch your brain from like, oh, I'm going from 9 to 5 work mode into, okay, I have to teach tonight. And that's a weird jostle to make. Whereas definitely the biggest benefit I thought of doing an in-person like month immersion was just that your brain was there. Like there was no, you're on the campus, you're there absorbing it. So even if you have no intention to teach, which is totally fine, I do think there definitely is a benefit of just inhabiting that space for 28 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is like a really, what I found was it was like to be able to kind of disconnect from kind of the things that distract me and just focus on that. It was intense. But it was also like I got out and I was shocked at how much I had retained and I learned. Like I was just like amazed at what I retained because I didn't think I would retain it.
Yeah, I remember things from like years ago.
Austin, did you have you done this particular program on the Omega campus before?
Well, I created this program that we're doing.
Okay,
But I had done a program at Omega that was a
right.
300-hour teacher training. And so
Okay, got
that
it.
was my connection with Omega, that I had spent time there. And while I was there, I got to know the staff, and I got to introduce myself to people. And I stayed connected to Omega. And I think that's one of the things that I want to kind of like give a big like cheerleader boost for Omega, that when you spend that kind of time at a place, you become very attached to it in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
And you start to support it in other ways. And so ever since I went to Omega, it's probably like at least every other year I'll go for some program I will see. As a participant, I've been there for some other big programs. I was there for one of the John of God healing sessions, that was powerful. I was also there for the Yoga Service Council when we wrote the book on sexual trauma and teaching yoga. So I've been there quite a bit since I did my teacher training, and have stayed in touch with those people at Omega that are part of the management team and organizers.
Right. Okay.
And I know, and you're a member of Omega.
Yeah. So I've spent I guess my first session was with Brian Weiss, Dr. Brian Weiss, and I believe I was there 9 days. So that was my longest. And then last summer I was there for Opening the Heart. That was wonderful, and that was a week long. Yeah. So I've lived on the camp. I stay on the campus, and I love it. I've never done a month there, but
well, and we have Saturdays off, right? We have one day a week off? No, I thought we had there's one off day, right? Oh, okay.
They're gonna get the day they're gonna get off is they're gonna get Dev Dutt's weekend off, and then there's like a half day off.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That was the same at ours too.
Yeah, it was because it's just too much information to cover. It really is. I mean, 300 hours is 300 hours, no matter how you chalk it up.
Yeah, it's a lot.
You know, it's a lot of hours. And I also think that that's one of the other things that happened post-pandemic is people kind of went to these 200-hour teacher trainings. I'm not sure how you kind of give all of the information that you need. I think the cat walked on Bob's.
Yeah.
That's funny.
In 200 hours, you know.
Yeah.
So it really is, once you do a 300-hour, I feel like that you have kind of completed the information that you should obtain to just have a foundation. But 200 hours, you always see people then trying to get people to do an extra 150 hours on another, payment plan with another platform, with another this and another that. It becomes a module thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of just not really a great structure, because that becomes a commercial structure.
Yeah.
It's just that this becomes about how can I turn this? And my feeling is like, what I want out of this is I want to see better yoga teachers out there in the world. I want to see, and I want to see more knowledgeable yoga practitioners if they don't want to teach. That's what I would like to see out of this. I would like to see people who then also have the kind of awareness and knowledge that if they are looking for something deeper, they know which direction to go. And I don't think that there's a lot of teacher trainings out there that are actually helping people find them on a deeper level.
And since the pandemic, you even have these online 200- and 300-hour teacher trainings that really are pretty useless, because there's no connection to the students that you're actually going to be teaching. And it's
I also think that it's just kind of like low-hanging fruit, because what you have is you have pre-recorded things put on a platform that then you just log into the pre-recorded thing and sit there and listen. But there's nobody, if you have questions, there's no one to turn around to and kind of ask your question. And that, I think, is also like, it goes back to that idea that Kate was just speaking about, that idea of being in the room with someone else and having that interhuman connection, that if something is unclear, that you have the capability of saying, wait a minute, I don't understand what you're saying. Can you please explain this to me again? And
Excuse me, I'm having work done in my apartment, so I have to keep going back and forth.
That's okay. That's okay. That's a big part of the yoga tradition, is to be able to ask questions and have the teacher answer them in real time.
And I also think that most trainings don't prepare you for the moment that you have to get up and stand in front of a group of people, maybe all strangers, and tell them what to do. And they're looking at you, okay. And that's terrifying.
Yeah, and that's why we have the wonderful Kate here, who is an actress, who does our speech and vocal section, that's kind of an unusual component of.
Yeah, I've actually never seen that at a yoga teacher training, like, ever.
No, but and even within yoga, I think that you should have it, because it deals with the throat chakra, right? If we talk about subtle body, you're being able to vocalize and speak deals with the throat chakra. And so I've never seen that either, where it's always this kind of idea that, people are just going to know how to present themselves and speak.
Well, it's a storytelling art form as well, because like asana, like if you've taken any sort of class, even a meditation class, there's a beginning, middle, and end. So you have to have the capacity to be able to know when is the beginning, when is the middle, when is the end, and how do I get to those places vocally. So I do think it's an oral tradition. It's passed, yoga was passed on way before mouth to mouth than it was written down. So it's like, you have to be able to have that knowledge. And that's definitely not something that I think most trainings cover, even though I think that is the foundation. It's a ceremony, right? Like, you're going through a ceremony. It's a ritual. So you have to have somebody there traditionally to like guide you through the ceremony. How do you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I think that's also, and I think also it's what you bring to that is you help people build confidence in their own voice.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't like the sound of their own voice, and it's like, well, you just got to get over that, and that's how you learn. Just doing it, that's how you learn.
But I think in a world where we talk about like, hearing others' voices and being able to speak your truth, and you can't have that inhibition of using the instrument. You have to be able to engage with the instrument.
Do you both practice in Jersey City with Austin?
They're in Canada, and they're in.
I'm in Canada. I'm in Eastern Canada right now, on a place called Cape Breton Island. But I normally live in the Toronto area.
Okay.
Yeah, and I do practice regularly at home. I just started about 1 year and 7 months ago. Really, really love it, and would like to learn more about the tradition of yoga and all of what seemed really inspiring in the write-up. I was a teacher for 31 years. I had a classroom for 10, but then went on and was in special education after that. So I I'm not afraid of teaching. I just don't know if that's something that I'm feeling called to do right now. So I'm just curious for learning really and growing.
That's really interesting too, because like I was an Ashtangi, doing handstands and stuff. And then I find now that the majority of my practice, like I still practice asana twice a week, let's say, hour
Yeah.
practices, but I practice pranayama and meditation now, like every single day.
Yeah.
That's where
Yeah.
my practice has shifted. And I don't feel like, oh, my practice is lacking now. I
Right.
just
Right.
feel like, because I never used to do those other two things when I was doing the
Right.
like
It just
6
shifts.
day a
Yeah.
week. Yeah. So that's a nice thing too, because I felt a lot of people, I think, I mean, myself included, when I started doing that, I was like, oh, am I slacking or whatever? But actually having the knowledge base from my original 300 hour, and then I apprenticed with Austin for another 800 hour, it was just like, no, that's just where the practice, where I need to go. And it might shift again, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But knowing A, how to do it, and then
Yeah.
B, how to kind of like ride that wave of change.
Yeah.
Was a nice thing that I don't think I would have done had I just been practicing in a studio, just taking classes. I would have probably stopped having classes, and then I would have just fallen off, I think. So it definitely gave me the like long-term knowledge to have the discipline to continue a practice, but just let it evolve,
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's also like when Wendy said that she was interested in the 6 pillars. One of the 6 pillars is a sadhana. And sadhana is an interesting word. Sadhana, we translate it a lot of times into practice, that you have to have a practice. But in reality, a sadhana is a path and a means to an end. But that gets a little complicated to try to explain to people. So on a sadhana, when you're on a yoga sadhana, your yoga sadhana is going to change over time. The path is going to change over time. Some days it's going to be rocky, some days it's going to be smooth, some days it's going to be uphill, downhill. So as we grow on that path, the environment and what we're practicing actually changes. And so like Kate said, like, her journey's been that she went from Ashtangi, hardcore type
physical first.
physical,
Yeah.
regimented, to now it's more about internalizing those things. And I think that is the journey that so many of us make. Yoga asana is an introduction to yoga.
But it's so interesting. I mean, during the pandemic, all the studios I was going to have closed down and have not reopened. So I'm doing it online, but it's so interesting. Some teachers are just, it's about the exercise.
Yeah.
Right? Yoga is a form of exercise, and other teachers are much more spiritual in their approaches, which I find really interesting.
To me, Iyengar had the best phrase for that of all time. Because like even segmenting it from exercise and then the philosophy or the spirituality is actually kind of what yoga is trying to break in terms of at least like the urban sadhu practice, right? Where we're seeing things in a non-dualistic fashion, or at least seeing how you can't have one without the other. And Iyengar very famously said, how can you know God without knowing your big toe, right? And in order to move the big toe, you have to do exercise. You have to do physical work. It burns calories. Like it makes your muscle move. It makes your bones stronger. But that also leads to a deeper like psycho-emotional connection, which can be the conduit for like a very profound experiential spirituality. So to me, that's like, you can't have one without the other. I love a good workout. I like lift weights all the time.
To focus on the exercise quote unquote piece of it.
Yeah. And I think that like when people focus on the exercise of it, it's just it's like when you were a kid, when your parents took you to the swimming pool, the public swimming pool for the first time, only the most sadistic parent would throw their kid in the 9-foot deep pool into the pool. They took you to that little baby pool that was only like this much water in it, right? And there was a little rope that kind of like kept you from going off into that 3-foot drop all of a sudden. And I think yoga asana is very much like that. Most people are introduced to yoga through the idea of it being physical exercise. Then, I mean, also in America, at least in our area, they're all introduced to it through hot yoga. The room has to be like full of steam and humidity, you know, and I think that's fine. I think that's a wonderful way to be introduced to it. I don't hold, when I was young, when I first started my own practice, I was like, oh, those people are really foolish. They don't really get it. But now I realize it's that introduction into the pool. You know,
I was that person. I was just like, I want to burn calories and be thin. And then I evolved into the person who's like, I'm gonna sit and breathe. Like that's a huge jump in. I've been practicing for 16 years, and that's a huge jump to make. And I still have like so far to go, but that's kind of the power of, I think, just like trusting the process and the practice, you know.
And I also think that that's like where good yoga teachers come into play. When they want to teach yoga, they accept that that they may be just teaching physical asana to the group in the beginning. That, you know, that's where you are in the teaching cycle also. That you're not going to walk in and start talking about Advaita Vedanta, you know, the first yoga class you have with a group of students. You got to build them up to like that, you know, kind of philosophical viewpoint. And then as the students get to know you, and they know that they trust that you know what you're talking about, then all of a sudden they start asking you questions, or they want you to start, you know, teaching those deeper esoteric philosophical concepts. And start talking about, like, what is the difference between dualism and non-dualism? Is it a dualistic world? Is it a non-dualistic world? How are you viewing the world? You know, but that was definitely not the first class I taught at a gym. It was like down dog, chaturanga, up dog, step forward, warrior one.
Mine was like, we're doing every pose in the book in 45 minutes. And it's like, whoa there. Take it easy.
Yeah. So, you know, and so I think that and I really didn't, you know, one of that, I think I'm going to go back to like when we talk about this teacher training, one of the things that's like really different that about this teacher training than the teacher training that Kate and I both did is I became, as I kept practicing, I became very influenced by Kashmir Shaivism. And Kashmir Shaivism is not a practice that is very well known in America, mainly because Kashmir is kind of in a region that's been kind of sealed off from the world. And those people who practice it are rather shy. They're not really, they're introverts instead of extroverts. But in the Shaiva Sutras of Vasugupta, they're very short little sutras. Sutras are only a couple of words, no more than 6 at most. And like in the second chapter, I think it's the 3rd sutra, is yoga asana leads to deeper waters. And when I read that, I thought, he's telling you, let people who want it to be exercised, let it be exercised. They're not ready for the deep water yet.
That's interesting.
And he's a late commentary, right? This is a late commentary. It's not like the Vedas or Upanishads. This is a text. It's probably only 1,000 years old. I would have to check the date on that, but it's medieval. Like, you know, it's a medieval text. And so he's in the height of the whole yoga asana craze in India anyway, where people are actually practicing these down dogs and put your foot behind your head kind of thing. And he's just like, look, let them be there if that's where they are on their spiritual journey. Don't try to force them to understand is, the question is the world dualistic or non-dualistic, yet. Let them be where they are. When the time is right, the yoga will reveal itself.
Interesting.
And that was when I really changed my attitude on how I teach. When I read that commentary, and realized that we need all of these different approaches to the practice of yoga to have it be a diverse practice, right?
And I also think that this training differs from a lot of other trainings because naturally you have the physical, technical components of the poses and how they all work together and what the body's doing. But Austin has taken a lot of time with the spiritual and the subtle parts of the training, and says, this one says this one says that, this one says this. They all have different viewpoints. You can look at this and then you decide what your answer is. And that's very different because so many other trainings say, this is the only path there is.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I was trained in one of those that it was kind of like my teachers wanted me to do what they were doing. Whatever they were doing, they wanted me to emulate what they were doing. And I tried that. It didn't work for me. And it didn't mean that I didn't admire or respect what they taught me and I didn't gain anything from it. But I think that we have to kind of understand that, and Patanjali tells you this in the Yoga Sutras when he says, all people are going to see an object differently through the lens of their own projections. They're going to see the world differently. They're going to see the object differently. The object to him being the soul, right? And so you have to let each individual person have that personalized relationship with the internal. You can't tell them what it is. It won't work. And so when I developed this, my goal was, it was almost to be like, have it become like a comparative religion course where we'll take like all of these different yoga traditions and we'll say, here, they all want us to get to this point of yoga. But how we get there up the mountain, there's like a lot of different paths and there's a lot of different discussions about, is it this or is it that? Who's right? I don't know. Who's wrong? Nobody's wrong. It has to resonate within you. So one of the, I have people from different spiritual traditions also speaking. My friend Hari Kirtan Das is going to come and he's going to do all of the Sanskrit. He's from ISKCON. He's from ISKCON. He's from the Hare Krishna movement. It's not a movement that resonates within me. But, he and I are planning to do a big talk about like how that even though we're both practicing yoga, our spiritual practices are different and why they're different. Because like, it's so interesting. I was raised in a Methodist family. My grandfather was a very famous Methodist minister. I had to go to church every week. Every Sunday you went to church, you were seen, you were there to be seen. It was part of being a part of the community. And my friend Hari Kirtan Das, he was raised in New York City, a Jewish family who was not observant and had no spiritual tradition growing up. And so he embraced that kind of organization that ISKCON offered, and I kind of rejected that. I wanted something that was more on my terms as I grew up, and not something that was had committees and groups and gatherings and time frames. And so that kind of thing doesn't work for me. And that's what I think Patanjali's talking about. that, you know, even the samskaras, the things that we've karmically taken on in this life are going to affect us on that yoga sadhana. And we're each going to see and approach that yoga sadhana different based upon those karmic experiences we've had, even in this life. So there can't be a right or wrong path. There's just many paths, and how you get there, it may be different for each person. But the ultimate goal is always the same. The ultimate goal is this idea of unioning with higher consciousness, of understanding some traditions will say it's understanding the soul. Other people will argue that there is no soul, that you just are, it's pure consciousness. Other people will say it's God realization. You know, here again, I think that's that personalized understanding of what it is in this karmic body that you have. And so I try not to tell people what's right or wrong. I try to give them options. And if I don't know something, I'll tell you I don't know. I'm not really good with Buddhist philosophy and Buddhist teachings. I can point you in the right direction of some great Buddhist teachers, but it's not my specialty.
So just to get because I read the description, which was pretty fulsome. I know there'll be some guest folks, but the breakout of like generally will be obviously practicing and learning the poses, and sort of, I guess my interest would be what is the meaning in a sense, and where am I going? Like what would I want to head toward, considering, you know, people aren't likely to be perfect with the poses. So what am I aiming for, and what is it meant to do? And then like, so what's the day look like? Obviously it'll be that, but there'll be a lot of teaching as well. And is it sort of broken up?
The morning half, after the morning, each morning we start out with focusing on a mantra.
Yeah.
And we chant it, and we have a little discourse on it, and then we meditate on the mantra. After that is a open class, either taught by myself or Kate in real time. So it's not like a recorded situation. We're actually, we'll stop and address things that we're seeing, but we'll do a class. And then there'll be what we are calling a yoga asana, or a yoga lab, an asana lab. And then the asana lab, it'll be more like a workshop of us breaking down the energetics of asanas. Now, over that, I think that is over the course of about 12 days total. Then the last part of the training, that asana lab becomes us looking at the different class types within the urban Sadhu yoga method. So we actually go through, and I explain and teach to you the fundamentals course, the foundation vinyasa course, the level 2 course. We look at the urban Sadhu yoga triguna class, which is a class. There's like 20 minutes of vinyasa, like sun salutations, and then 20 minutes of yin style, and then there's 20 minutes of pranayama meditation. And then we look at the reunification, chakra reunification class. So we spend some time working on class types after we get through all of the canon of the asanas over about, forward folds, back bends, twist, hip openers, blah, blah, blah. Then after the later part of the day is more lecture and group teaching. So there is time for after about the first 8 days, then there is an evening session before dinner where we stop doing lectures, and we let you get in small groups with your peers and start vocally teaching a little bit, giving each other instructions.
What is your ideal group size? Like what are you hoping for a group of? Do you have a size in mind? How many?
I might listen. There's my group size and there's Omega's group size. there has to be at least two people.
Right, of course.
If there's, teaching, I think a nice group would be 12 to 15.
Okay.
An even number of 16. We're hoping we could have 20.
Yeah.
But it's our first time at, coming into Omega. And I think that it's also kind of the first time that Omega's seeing a 300-hour teacher training since 2016.
Right, right,
So
right.
it's-
Okay.
Which was my teacher training there. That's how long it's been.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
So it's kind of a lot of the people that, were at that teacher training support staff at Omega is no longer there. So this is kind of a new adventure for all of us all over again because of the time lapse.
And this is the only 300-hour residential teacher training in the country right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's no Kripalu has broken theirs up into modules where they're having people come on a weekend and then they do work at home on like Zoom, and then they come back for a second weekend. And but it's not even post-pandemic, they let go of their, what they had, which was a month-long teacher training that they had historically had for years. It's no longer a full state, which I think is a sad thing. I think it's a very, and now the only teacher trainings you have that are like this are the ones where people go to Bali or they go to exotic locations, and then you're really kind of talking about yoga tourism.
Yeah. Okay. And I don't know what asanas are.
Asanas, the poses.
Awesome. Sorry. Those are they the pillars? Okay, got that. Yeah.
The asanas, the pillars of our method are a series of ideas and concepts that I framed the way I teach, which holds up the teachings. So they're a way to help guide practitioners and teachers and the students on just what is the system we're talking about within the urban Sadhu yoga method. Non-harming,
Right.
the idea that there has to be a consistent practice, that you have to be on a path, that there needs to be this idea of self-study, of looking at what's going on internally, which could start as alignment physically, right? Like Kate said, if you don't know what the big toe is doing, how do you know what God is?
Yeah.
Meditation, but then this final pillar of Dharma. Like, how am I going to take these things that I've learned into the world and offer them back to the world in a positive way? Like, what's my responsibility to the collective? And that becomes a huge part. Because I can tell you, there's one thing that ancient yogis were concerned about. They were concerned about ethical living. That was it. They didn't care about the down dogs and all that stuff were fine, but in the end, they wanted a more ethical world.
I would like that too, especially these days. My goodness gracious.
Yes. So, and I think these teachings, and I think that these teachings can bring that to people. And I think it's like, doesn't matter whether you decide you want to, teach yoga or not, or you are just able to hold a conversation with people and talk about, what does it mean to live ethically in the world today? Yoga can help you do that and give you the self-confidence that you can state your beliefs without becoming aggressive or antagonistic or volatile to the other person, which is the world we're living in now. That if you don't agree with me, then, the best thing for me is to start screaming at you and shout you down.
Yeah.
and nothing comes of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nothing good comes of that.
No.
So
Okay. Well, so interesting. I can share my contact info. I have lots
That'd
to
be
think.
great.
Yeah. I'll put
And
it
here
up.
I'm going to, Wendy, I'm going to put a link to our explorations. Each month, Austin writes an exploration about a different topic, so that's good reading.
Okay.
And then I'll send you a link to some of the different live classes that we've done of the different varieties.
Okay.
An open class, an express class, a fundamentals class, and then you can see exactly what all those look like, because I'm sure, I don't know where you do your
Practice.
your practice with, or what person or what site, but this will give you a good idea what we do and what that looks like a class.
Okay. I go to a studio in person. I don't do any yoga online.
Okay.
Yeah.
don't
Do you
be
just
don't be intimidated by anything that you see online in the class. We do
No.
teach. I mean, depending on which class it is, they can be. We tend to teach like a little handstand, a little this, a little that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a nice. You'll definitely get stronger physically. Wouldn't you say,
Yeah.
Kate? Yeah.
Sorry, there's some lawn service around here, so I'm having to like surreptitiously click it off and then click it on. Yeah, no, it's a very balanced class. You will get as much activation as you will relaxation, for sure.
I did have some people send me some questions that they wanted me to answer, because we're recording this and we'll put it up on YouTube. And I wanted to answer a few of them. Somebody asked what the hours of the training were, and it is kind of 8 in the morning until about 10:30 at night. It's kind of a full day.
Yeah.
I also had a question too. So when you have time from people who couldn't make it today.
Okay. What's your question?
They were wondering if there are options for scholarships or payment plans through Omega for the actual like staying on campus.
Yes. So I did reach out to Omega yesterday and I asked about that. There is no housing stipend or housing scholarship. Omega is willing to match us with the tuition up to $1,000 for those people in need, but it wouldn't be for housing. That may be something that we would, if we continue our relationship, we want to maybe look at long-term and see if we can have a discussion. But I do want to say that I think that I was hoping Brent would jump on and we could talk about like the types of housing. I think if you're young and adventuresome, the tent situation is not a bad situation. I actually had somebody, I've known a lot of people to stay in the tents at Omega, and we'll be there for August. And that's like the least expensive option. And then the other option, which is the option that I've always done, is the group cabins where you get your own little room, but you're sharing a bathroom and with others. And that's always.
That's what I stayed in when I was there, and it was really nice.
I would say the others are like luxury options, the like cabin, the individual cabin with a little kitchenette and all that. That's like top of the line penthouse staying.
And then Kate, we're also saying that people could start a GoFundMe, and the second thing is to look for a 15-month no interest credit card and pay it off like that. So over 15 months. So that's
I think that's what I did. I had like a very low interest loan, and that's what I did for mine.
Yeah.
I did pay everything back with the money I earned from teaching then professionally. So that worked out. It was an investment for sure.
And the GoFundMe's really, I saw a lot of people do GoFundMe's over the years just to kind of raise the amount of money that they were missing, and family and friends are always willing to contribute small donations to people's education and, expansion.
And then I think we'll be doing one of these the first weekend of every month for the next 4 months. So if you know anyone else, I know a lot of people couldn't make it. This was a weird time for people. Friday at 1 o'clock, they said, "Oh, we're still at work," or whatever. So somebody emailed me this morning, could I send the recording of this? But we're going to do one a month for the next 4 months. The first weekend, like either the Saturday or Sunday, probably in the afternoon. We'll discuss that. What's the best timing that everyone thinks is available?
And I did have another question that somebody had asked me, so I want to answer this question. So somebody who's a nurse asked me, how many hours of yoga anatomy are they getting? And this was an interesting thing, because they were looking at asking their hospital to
Contribute.
As continuing education. So that's one of the things where you're able to a lot of places, if you're in healthcare, will take yoga teacher trainings and use it as continuing education. So it's 9.5 hours of yoga anatomy with Lori Zucker and Elaine Anderson, they're both faculty at Rutgers University in the PT department. And then 20 hours of asana lab, those first 10 weeks where we're breaking down asanas, where we'll continue to investigate and look at anatomy, bones, joints, internal organs, nervous system. So it's actually comes out to 29 hours, which is a huge,
a lot.
scientific based.
That's about 19 more hours than you get in an average training. You usually get 10 anatomy hours, which is basically like the knee bone's connected to the shin bone. Do you know what I mean? This is much more. This is much more in depth for sure.
And then I think, Wendy, they're looking at that too, in more, how does anatomy play into the actual poses and asanas, what connects to where, and how do you move from one
we're doing that.
to another.
Also, I would also say, like, when you're dealing with injury, when you're dealing with when you're dealing with the yoga asanas and you see energetic blockage, you need to understand the anatomy to see where the blockage is coming from. Because what's interesting, a lot of times, if you see something happening in somebody's hip, it may not be coming from the hip. It may be coming from the knee. It may be coming from the back and the spine, and it's manifesting itself in the hip. So where are the other places that you're going to look as a yoga teacher to understand where those physical blocks are coming from? Is it muscular? Is it bone? Is it muscular? Is it also emotional? It could be any of those things. And so there's two things that we will cover in this training. We will cover science-based anatomy, but then we will look at yoga theory of subtle body and energetics. That's chakras and nadis and vayus and the more esoteric teachings of what the body is doing. They don't work together. I mean, they do work together, but I keep them very separately. This is science and medicine, and this is theory. I like to mix the two of those and say, oh yeah, you can blend your Western science-based anatomy with your Eastern energetic philosophy. Because I think there's also the capability for somebody who wants to become a yoga teacher to actually go over and practice and teach yoga in the medical industry and help people who have injury and are suffering. And in those cases, I believe that these subtle, energetic concepts of chakras and kundalini and enlightenment need to kind of be put on the shelf for a little while and deal with medicine and science.
Yeah.
And Wendy, we haven't, I mean, I work with Austin on the illustrations too, and he hadn't found any that actually suited his needs. So like for this example, this one, we just created this one. It's in the chat there. So
What is the show chat?
Let's see. I don't see it yet.
Okay. Oh, you don't see it?
You can put it up
No.
on your screen, Bob.
Okay.
I think you can put it up on your screen. Which one are you talking?
I'm going to sign off. I'm sorry. I just have to keep on going back and forth to my kitchen. But this is really interesting. I wish I could do it, but
Oh,
Nancy,
nice to meet you, Nancy.
Nice to meet you.
Nancy, can you do me a favor? Did she jump off?
no, I'm here.
Yeah.
Can you do me a favor? Send me your contact, because I want to send you another contact that I think will maybe suit your needs and what you're looking for.
Okay, I'll put my email address in the chat.
Okay, and Bobby, you'll get that for me.
I will, yeah.
Because I don't know how to use that chat. So
Okay. So you can see can you see my screen?
Yes, thank you.
So we actually just created this past week because we couldn't find anything that was so specific.
Yeah.
Well, it's always been kind of confusing because everything gets lumped up into that top figure in the pyramid where you're talking about how prana moves through the body, and you're looking at it as a young yoga teacher and you're going, what the hell is that? I don't understand any of this. And so we ended up breaking it and segmenting it and really trying to explain how, in a very logical, clear way, of how ancient people saw the movements of the body, like everything from hiccuping and belching to, childbirth and menstruation and ejaculation. That they did understand that somehow there was something flowing through the body. And when you start talking about this and you've never thought about this, it's a very confusing concept. So we're really looking for ways to develop, and Bobby's a wonderful graphic artist.
Good job. Yes.
That we've been able to, and one of the other one, I don't know if you want to show it, Bobby, but there's one that we have of the chakra system that I've always seen chakras presented like this from the front, and never. And I asked, and I wanted to develop one that was seen from the side, so you actually understand that it's not a flat two-dimensional thing, that it's actually curving. Can you put that chakra one up, Bobby?
Okay, 1 minute. Let me just see if I can. Yeah. I have to just.
Hey guys, I gotta log off, but I will see you when I come up next week.
Okay, we'll see you when you come up next week. It'll be great to see you.
Bye, everyone. Nice to meet you.
Bye, Kate.
Bye, Kate. See you.
See you.
Okay, 1 second. Just let me get this up here.
It's always so hard to do this. Like I said, he makes all that stuff work that I don't know how to make work.
Yeah.
He says I could learn to do it.
But you say you've got your own expertise. You don't want to take everyone's, right?
That's right. What would he do?
Yeah, what would he do? So, oh, there you go.
So
Oh,
see-
very nice. Yeah.
So
Oh, it was there.
it was there and it went away, Bobby.
Okay.
There.
Oh, there
So-
you go.
so,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I've never really seen one. It's always been flat on, and you think it's a flat, like
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
road map. Like, and instead, when you cut it from the side and you start looking at it from the side, you see the chakra system working as this snake-like movement up the body itself.
Yeah.
It's much more sensual and kind of dynamic. And you don't get that unless you look at it from a side, a profile. So
That's
like
good.
things like that, we like have developed that. I've actually never seen in any other, like I've never seen it with anybody else presenting it that way. It's always this kind of like stock images. that
Yeah.
everybody
Yeah.
comes from. And yeah, maybe it's just because, I was in the theater for so long, and I'm like, you have to look at this in the round. You can't look at this in
Right.
a flat way.
Yeah.
So yeah, so those are just some of the things.
Okay. Well, you'll invite me to future meetings, I guess, discussions. I can.
Yep, absolutely. We have your
Okay.
email,
Okay,
and
Bob.
I'm going to send you links to a few of Austin's classes too, live
Oh,
classes.
that's wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate it.
And then take a look at some of that, those explorations about
Okay.
it's by, all different kinds of topics.
Okay. Well, it was very nice meeting you both.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you, Bob and Austin. We'll hope to see you soon.
Sounds great.
Okay, take good care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.